Buhari gets 7-day deadline over proposed 4.8 billion naira to monitor WhatsApp calls. Socioeconomic Rights and Accountability Project has urged President Muhammadu Buhari to urgently redirect the proposed spending of 4.8 billion naira of public money to monitor WhatsApp messages of Nigerians to pay some salaries of doctors. The group said if by 7 days the president does not heed to its call, it will take legal action against the president. They said, we also urge you to send to the National Assembly a fresh supplementary appropriation bill which reflects the redirected budget for its approval. In the open letter dated 14 August 2021 and signed by Serap Deputy Director Kolawole Oluwadare, the organization said redirecting the proposed spending of 4.8 billion naira would be entirely consistent with your constitutional oath of office and the letter and spirit of the Nigerian Constitution 1999 as amended, as it would promote efficient, honest and legal spending of public money. According to Serap, redirecting the proposed spending of 4.8 billion naira would also remove the threats to fundamental human rights of Nigerians and ensure access to quality healthcare for the socially and economically vulnerable people who rely on public hospitals and have no opportunity for medical treatment elsewhere. The letter reads in part, any appropriation law ought to comply with the Nigerian Constitution and the country's international human rights obligations and commitments. The constitutional oath of office implicitly provides some safeguards on the appropriation and spending of public funds and imposes a legal binding obligation on public officers to preserve the public money and not to disperse it except conformably to the Constitution. Serap believes that any proposed spending of public funds should stay within the limits of constitutional responsibilities and oath of office by public officers, as well as comply with Chapter 2 of the Nigerian Constitution relating to fundamental objectives and directive principles of state policy. The mere threat of mass surveillance, and even when secret, coupled with the lack of remedy, can constitute an interference with human rights, including the rights to privacy, freedom of expression, peaceful assembly, and association. The proposed spending of 4.8 billion naira of public funds as contained in the Supplementary Appropriation Act, which you signed last month, would give rise to serious violations of the human rights of Nigerians and other people, as it would grant free rein to government agencies to conduct mass surveillance of communications of people. The proposed spending also fails to meet the requirements of public interest, legality, necessity, and proportionality. Additionally, the lack of any safeguards against discriminatory decision-making and access to an effective remedy shows the grave threats it poses to constitutionally and internationally recognized human rights. We would be grateful if the recommended measures are taken within 7 days of the receipt and or publication of this letter. If we have not heard from you by then, Serap shall take all appropriate legal actions to compel your government to comply with our request in the public interest. Serap is concerned that the proposed spending to monitor WhatsApp messages, phone calls, and text messages of Nigerians and other people is inconsistent and incompatible with the Nigerian Constitution and the country's international human rights obligations. Specifically, Section 37 of the Nigerian Constitution and Article 17 of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, to which the country is a state party, provide for the right to freedom of arbitrary or unlawful interference with privacy and correspondence communications and private data. Section 39 of the Nigerian Constitution and Article 19 of the Covenant also protect everyone's rights to hold opinions without interference and to seek, receive, and impart information and ideas of all kinds, regardless of frontiers and through any media. Serap wishes to stress your government's obligations under Article 9 of the African Charter on Human and People's Rights and Article 13 of the UN Convention Against Corruption, both of which Nigeria has ratified. Similarly, the UN General Assembly has condemned unlawful or arbitrary surveillance and interception of communications as highly intrusive acts that interfere with fundamental human rights. Serap is concerned that the powers to conduct arbitrary, abusive, or unlawful surveillance of communications may also be used to target political figures and activists, journalists, and others in the discharge of their lawful activities, especially given the growing repression of civic space, suspension of Twitter, and attacks on freedom of expression and media freedom in the country. Privacy and expression are intertwined in the digital age, with online privacy serving as a gateway to secure exercise of the freedom of opinion and expression. Therefore, targets of surveillance would suffer interference with their rights to privacy and freedom of opinion and expression, whether the efforts to monitor is successful or not. Interference with privacy through targeted surveillance is designed to repress the exercise of the right to freedom of expression. Surveillance of journalists, activists, opposition figures, critics, and others simply exercising their rights to freedom of expression would lead to violations of other human rights, such as the right to liberty and freedom from torture and other ill treatment. Wow. Okay, that was very much intense and straight to the point, very much assertive. I can deem that very much effective in a law-abiding nation. In Nigeria, not so much. Again, Serap, of course, is consistent with throwing, suits the way of, the Nigerian government every single time, and really, as they should, really. It's just the effectiveness of it. But again, doesn't mean they should not be consistent with it. Absolutely right. I mean, look at the banner of Twitter. I mean, they also did something about it. They also gave out letters, said by this time do this, do that, and look at what has happened. I mean, of course, you can still use Twitter through VPN and stuff, but officially it is banned. It means that they do not want activities or Twitter-related activities in the country. So that's it. That is literally it. The deadline, I mean, it's like 4.8 billion naira. Are you kidding me? You're telling me you're going to use that amount of money to monitor WhatsApp calls. Why? Why? What is the reason? Who asked? And if WhatsApp itself give permission for I don't even think all these apps are even up for that, because for them to be run in the country, then of course I know they must remit something to the government and all that, and there of course rules and regulations. But do you think these apps would actually give permission for a government to interfere with activities of the app to control a certain population? And if that even ties in, depending on if they push this, if on WhatsApp, I'm sure will not agree, because listen, we're gonna make it a human rights issue. It's gonna go global, and WhatsApp may just even be banned. Who knows? Not saying it's not possible. They did it to Twitter. They can definitely do it to WhatsApp, and if they do it to WhatsApp, it'll be more of a bigger problem, which could even cause protests and stuff. But it is what it is. Put what you think about it, and do not forget to like and subscribe.